watching Fox Carolina News. You decide. The Spartanburg County Sheriff Debate.
And welcome back to Fox Carolina's debate for Sheriff of Spartanburg County. Gentlemen, you gave your opening statements just moments ago. We're going to go ahead and get into our discussion portion of tonight's debate. Mr. Ryan, because of the coin flip, you will be the first to answer this question. And this one comes from a lot of voters in Spartanburg County. Really, the key word throughout this entire campaign and this race for sheriff has been transparency. So, Mr. Ryan, you have 90 seconds. How do you plan to bring transparency back to the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office?
Thank you very much. That's a great question. And during my campaign, during the entire campaign, we have been the most transparent candidates. We made a decision up front to release my entire personnel file to ensure that people could see the type of career that I've led and see exactly what I've done throughout my career. It's important. That's the only way as a candidate that you can show them the type of transparency that you want to lead with. But I've said within my platforms that we will, at the Sheriff's Office, if I'm elected, we're going to establish on our website a portion on there where you will be able to go look at the budget at all times. Every quarter, we're going to update the budget on the website to ensure that you can see line item by line item where the money is being spent within the Sheriff's Office. Not only that, it's important to understand how your office is performing. Each year, at the end of the year, we're going to put together basically a report card of what the Sheriff's Office has done. It will be released by the 31st of March, and it's going to give an outline of all the things that we have done, the successes that we have had, the areas that we need to improve in. We're going to have a plan for how we will react to these things if we're in a situation where we need to improve. It's basically an improvement plan, IP, which is an improvement plan. You'll be able to look at that. We'll be able to come up with a plan and set goals for the next year so we can actually make those goals. That's what transparency is all about, and I've been standing on that since I started in this campaign, and I will remain on that throughout the election cycle.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. Mr. Clevenger, exact same question for you. Transparency, key words. You have 90 seconds to explain how you plan to bring transparency back to the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office.
I'm no stranger to transparency. If anyone that lived in Spartanburg was here in 2011, you were aware of a train crash, a child's train crash at Cleveland Park where one child died and numerous other people were injured. The ride belonged to government, but I took on the investigation to make sure that the public knew exactly what went on. And there were those that speculated about how exactly that crash happened, but I made sure and followed through with that to make sure that the public was made aware and that the judicial process was adhered to, and the people that received these injuries received the appropriate award based on the negligence that was brought forth and announced. So I'm no stranger to transparency. I as well would publish the budget for the Sheriff's Office to show what is being spent to make sure the public is aware. There's also going to be a public information officer that is actually riding along with various divisions to show the public exactly what is going on day in and day out, how their tax money is being spent, and also post online so they can see exactly what these officers are doing and how they put their lives on the line every day and serve the public here in Spartanburg.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Let's go and stay on the topic of transparency because it is so important to voters. And while we're on this topic, our investigative team has learned from SLED that the Sheriff's Office has never requested an audit of the office until this July. Our senior investigative reporter, Grace Runkle, has more.
I requested copies of all the audits the State Law Enforcement Division has ever performed on the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office, and I got just one back. SLED says they only have record of one audit ever requested from the Sheriff's Office, and it's this evidence audit performed this summer at the request of Interim Sheriff Jeff Stevens. Since SLED only conducts audits if there's a new sheriff or by request, would you be open to outside agencies conducting audits of your department if elected sheriff?
All right, gentlemen, as you heard Grace mention, she was talking about those audits there. So, Mr. Clevenger, you first. If elected sheriff, do you plan to request routine audits of the Sheriff's Office from an outside agency?
When I took office in 2008, I requested an audit of the evidence room. Presently, the coroner's office, nor did at the time the coroner's office take any monies in, so there was no need for a request on the financial aspect. But to answer the question, yes, I would request that state law enforcement come in and check the evidence room as well as any financial aspects of what's going on in the sheriff's office. Presently, as I understand it, there is an open investigation where there may have been some audits performed. So before I find out exactly, if I'm elected sheriff, before I find out exactly what has been done on that front, we would look and see exactly what they've come up with and then make a decision from then about an external audit.
All right, Mr. Clevenger, thank you so much. Mr. Ryan, same question. You have 90 seconds. If elected sheriff, do you plan to request routine audits at the sheriff's office from an outside agency?
Yes, that's an easy question, because with everything that has taken place and the trust that has been hurt for the public within the sheriff's office in Spartanburg County. Let me make this very, very clear. We have to restore the public to the office of the sheriff. We're not worried about restoring the public's trust within the men and the women. The men and the women are doing an outstanding job at that agency. Their integrity is standing strong. But we have to ensure that we are making sure that everything has been audited, not just an audit of the evidence, but a complete forensic audit of everything that is taking place within that office. All monies that have come in and out, because we've already heard there's some discrepancies out there. We have to make sure that we have a clean slate going into that office once we take office at that point in time. Because if you don't have that clean slate, then what you end up running into is down the road there become questions. Well, did this happen prior to their administration, or did this happen after their administration? So it's a necessity that we go and do that. And I think it's important that you go to the outside, because when you bring state agencies in to do that, you want to ensure the public, going back to that transparency, that you're being completely transparent and you're pulling agencies in that are going to report things factually so all the public knows what they can expect.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Let's go ahead and stick on the topic of transparency, your experience in law enforcement and what you would bring into the job. So, Mr. Ryan, you first. You've spent decades with the South Carolina Highway Patrol, but the Highway Patrol is often limited when it comes to involvement in criminal investigations. How do you respond to voters if they question your experience in those types of investigations, which you would have to deal with if elected sheriff?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, and you heard me say this many times. You know, a sheriff has to function as a CEO when it comes right down to it. And anybody that goes into an office as a sheriff, if they think that they're going to have all the answers moving forward, then they're sadly mistaken and they're going to fail miserably. CEOs don't need 4.0s. What a sheriff has to do, you've got to go into office. You have to establish that command staff that are the experts in those areas to be able to utilize them to get that information and to make sure that things are being investigated exactly like they're supposed to be investigated. You have to utilize collective leadership. One of the problems that we have is so often sheriffs kind of become that absolute power. You've got to be willing to lean on your people, trust your people, build those relationships within your command staff, and it doesn't all fall upon you. It's like I say, I'll reiterate that and I go back. The moment that you go in there and you think you have all the answers, you're not going to do so. You're going to fail. What you have to do is ensure that you have the right people in the right places to conduct these investigations and lead the men and women of the sheriff's office to ensure that they're done fully and completely.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. Mr. Clevenger, question for you. Often we hear about the good old boy system when it comes to law enforcement. You have been part of law enforcement within Spartanburg County for decades, and you've been the coroner for 16 years. How do you respond to voters who may be concerned that you may be part of the good old boy system and share too close of a connection with the former sheriff, Chuck Wright?
Very good question. Ladies and gentlemen, the sheriff and the coroner in South Carolina, by Constitution, have to remain separated. The sheriff can't work for the coroner cannot work for the sheriff. The sheriff's office operated day in and day out 6 miles from the office of the coroner. There were interactions with the coroner's office and the sheriff's office where we are constitutionally and legally supposed to be in joint investigations on death. But at no time, and I repeat, at no time did I have any knowledge of anything wrongdoing or any improprieties that were going on within the sheriff's office. I've been asked a number of times about charges and why I did not charge the previous sheriff. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the previous sheriff has not even been charged today. That relief, when we talk about that, happened when the sheriff resigned. So as far as being good old boy, I worked at the sheriff's office. That's where my heart is at. That's why I'm running for sheriff, because we need to clean up the sheriff's office, restore the public trust, get back in there. But as far as good old boy, you're not looking at one of those. I make decisions day in and day out professionally based on the law and the truth. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Clevenger, thank you. Let's go ahead and stick with some of your experience here. Mr. Clevenger, this first one is for you.
Okay.
Back in 2023, a lawsuit was filed against your office accusing it of mishandling human remains with claims of ashes being mixed with cement. It was later settled just months ago. So what do you want voters to know about that case and those accusations?
Anyone can make an accusation in the judicial system. Just because an accusation is made does not mean that it is true. Ladies and gentlemen, the coroner or his designee, which is my indigent care specialist, does not touch the ashes, nor does the coroner cremate a body. We contract out to a funeral home, which has to be licensed in South Carolina, to make sure that process is taken care of. When the coroner receives those cremains and they're returned to the families, those pouches are sealed. So when you mention that there was a lawsuit, not only was the coroner's office accused, but the funeral home that cremated the body was accused. We had nothing to do with that. We legally released the cremains to the family. They made an allegation about that to a lawyer. As you stated, that has been taken care of, and at no time did Spartanburg County admit liability or wrongdoing in that process, and that's part of the legal standing on this.
Mr. Clevenger, thank you. Mr. Ryan, just hours ago, your opponent took to Facebook saying you've been untruthful about your record of voting for President Trump, even citing records he says he obtained from the State Election Commission that show you did not vote in November's general election. You made a comment during opening statements tonight. So we want to ask you now, did you vote in that election, and do you have a consistent record of voting for President Trump like you've previously stated? You have 90 seconds.
Yes, I absolutely did vote in that. You know, I've run my campaign completely clean. You can go back and you can look throughout my entire Facebook. You can see everything that I've done. At no time have I fired any attack at anybody. Mr. Clevenger and I have been friends, acquaintances for a long time. We've talked about this week. We've talked about this in front of other people. We've talked that we're going to stay on the up and up and not make attacks at people that are untruthful. Right before the election, the night before, we were at a prayer meeting together and we were talking about how we had been just attacked throughout this entire campaign. And right before the election took place, that information came out that I had not voted in the election, and we were laughing about it, and I told him that's untruthful. It's not true. I voted with my son. That was the first time he ever voted. Then all of a sudden, we talked yesterday about how we weren't going to do that, and this attack came out. Well, unfortunately, that's not true, and at 3:35 this afternoon, the Election Commission from the state of South Carolina corrected their mistake. I brought the information with me to show my son's name is Will, my name is Bill. Both of our names are William Thomas Ryan. We signed in 21 seconds apart, and we both voted on November the 5th. They acknowledged that they made a mistake. That was unchecked information, non-fact-checked information, came after me on something that was absolutely not true, and I have the evidence to prove that. So, absolutely, I did vote.
And Mr. Clevenger, you were referenced. You have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Before the information was put out, and let's be very clear, I've run a campaign on truth and on evidence. That evidence was proved via a Freedom of Information that was requested from the state, and they provided information to us that stated clearly with a date of birth that Mr. Ryan did not vote for President Trump at the time. That's the reason that information was put out there, because it had been questioned in another forum some time back.
All right, Mr. Clevenger, thank you. Mr. Ryan, you were mentioned again. You have 30 seconds to rebuttal that rebuttal.
Yeah, this is not the kind of politics we want, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody is sick and tired of the vitriol politics, and there's no reason for us to get into this. Obviously, you know, I'm expecting an apology to come out from their campaign, because I did vote in that election. It's been proven that I voted in that election. What should have happened, I should have been given the ability for him to call me and say, Bill, is this true? We've stood on the same stage trying to save young people's lives. There's no reason for us to be against each other. We're simply running for sheriff. We need to run clean elections.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Moving now to solving the sheriff's office and the issues there. According to numbers from SLED, crime rates for several crimes dropped from 2022 to 2023 in Spartanburg County. However, solving those crimes appears to be lacking compared to neighboring upstate counties. For example, SLED reports Greenville County had 31 murders in 2023 and posted an 84% clearance rate. As for Spartanburg County, SLED reports 18 murders in 2023 with just a 44% clearance rate. So, Mr. Ryan,
Yes.
you first. If elected sheriff, how can you bring balance to lowering crime rates and solving the crimes that do occur?
Thank you very much. That's a great question. There's several things that we can do. One of the platforms that I've talked about, obviously, is community policing. Community policing is extremely important. When we get back into those communities, we form those relationships, we meet those people, we build those relationships, and you start that rapport, and they begin to trust law enforcement again. What happens is they begin talking with law enforcement. Once they know that they can trust them, they start telling them the things that are going on. We have to be seen, but we have to get the manpower back up to have those people to build on that community relations and to build that community relations unit. Once people start talking to you, when they know that they can trust you, they're providing you information, and what you become is you become crime preventers, and that's what we want to be, but we also have to be crime solvers. The second part of that is signing multi-jurisdictional task force with the city and other agencies across the county so we can work on these crimes together, such as all the things that have taken place in the city just recently with the young man that was shot and unfortunately the 7-month-old that lost their life. We had multiple drive-by shootings, and we have to contend with those things. We're better together than we are separate, so we have to come together to start reducing those crimes collectively, not individually.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. Mr. Clevenger, same exact question to you. Those clearance rates, if elected sheriff, how can you bring balance to lowering crime rates and solving the crimes that do occur?
At the beginning of my campaign, one of the first things that I said was that Spartanburg needed to start talking to each other again. What I meant by that was our deputies are running call to call to call, and they do not have the ability to stop and talk to people in the businesses and in the communities about what's going on. I've had huge successes years ago with the police officers that were at home in neighborhoods, especially smaller neighborhoods, and a homicide that I personally worked was solved by the information given to me by that officer that was in the neighborhood. We've got to get back to putting more deputies in our neighborhoods, and with a rate of 25.5 people per day coming into Spartanburg, that may be a tall task. But what we've got to do to start with is refill the void that we have in our uniform patrol, get these officers out more wherever they can start talking to the public again. And also, I do not vary from Mr. Ryan when we talk about community-oriented policing and getting more police officers out. The public needs to see more of a presence, especially black and whites. Black and whites are a deterrent, and if you elect me sheriff, I will make sure that we get those in the neighborhoods and back talking to businesses to make sure the communication is at its optimum level to make sure that we can solve crime a lot better.
Another topic is retention rates there at the sheriff's office. Mr. Clevenger, you first. Fox Carolina Investigates has found retention issues at the sheriff's office, with a significant number of deputies recently leaving the office, with the majority resigning. We found those departures left some 108 vacancies at the office between 2023 and the first half of 2025. So, Mr. Clevenger, you first. How do you plan to fill current vacancies and correct any retention issues if elected sheriff?
The first thing the sheriff's going to have to do is go in and make his presence known and make sure that there's a full review of policy and procedures to ensure that every deputy is treated the same. We have deputies now that may commit an infraction and another deputy commit an infraction, and they're not treated the same. We've got to ensure that if they're going to work there, if we're going to ask them to stay, if we're going to ask them to commit to Spartanburg, that the sheriff is committed to making sure every one of them is treated the same. The pay as well is not top of the line whenever it comes to the needs and what's leaving Spartanburg, but we've got to pay our deputies better because it's more attractive to some of the larger counties that are paying up to $16,000 more a year for a deputy and a drive-home car. Supervision is going to have to be looked at as well to make sure that the supervisors are assisting the deputies when they're out here running call to call to call, and sometimes not able to get a meal because they're so busy. Uniform Patrol currently is close to 10 officers short per platoon, which brings up an interesting number, close to 40 deputies that were short in the black and white patrol units, and those are the ones I've already spoke about that need to be seen in our neighborhoods and businesses to help solve crime. So retention is going to start at the top with the sheriff to make sure everyone's treated the same and paid a good salary.
Mr. Clevenger, thank you, Mr. Ryan. Same question. How do you plan to fill current vacancies and correct any retention issues if elected sheriff?
You know, it's really easy. We got to change the culture within the sheriff's office. Right this minute, the culture is not where it needs to be. Culture starts with the sheriff, and that starts with servant leadership. You have to be able to pour into your people, and then it begins to change things from the inside out. Servant leadership's a really easy balance, and a lot of people don't understand that balance, and that's why it's important to have a sheriff in there that knows how to do it, knows how to sell it, and somebody that's been doing it their entire career from a leadership standpoint. And it's real simple. It's just nothing more than clarity balanced with grace, and expectation balanced with accountability. If you have clarity built into your agency but you don't give grace to your men and women, what you end up doing is you form an authoritarian type of leadership. If you have expectation and you don't have accountability, what you've done at that point in time is you've started apathy within your agency. That apathy continues to cause that rotation with your retention rates of people leaving over and over and over. When you balance those two things, what ends up happening is the people within your agency want to come to work. People see that we have something special going on, and they start coming to your agency as a result of what they're seeing. We start recruiting based on our reputation, and we start retaining based on our leadership. One of the things that I did in my former agency with the Highway Patrol, we looked at why people left. People never left an agency because of money. They left an agency because of leadership. Money is something that has to be dealt with, and we have to get that money up because it's unfair what the deputies in Spartanburg County are being paid for what they are asked to do. However, money's not going to fix everything. It's going to boil down to that leadership, that servant leadership, and having that servant's heart from those men and women at that office to turn into servant leadership as they grow.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. Moving on, gentlemen, we drove around the county to ask voters what are some of the most important issues for them. Many expressed the same concern, safety. And that's the case for this voter in Lyman.
Hi, my name is Zane Moormeyer. I live here in Lyman, Spartanburg County. This election is important to me because I'm worried about safety and security for my family, especially my grandchildren. And I would like to know what we can do to improve security for our schools and in our churches.
All right, gentlemen, as you heard, Mr. Ryan, you first. You have 90 seconds. What is your plan to increase safety in schools and churches?
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, that's one of the things I've been pushing out, wanting to make sure that these churches and these schools are safe. The reason that's so important is because that's what we refer to in the law enforcement world as a soft target. Why are they a soft target? They're not normally in a position to be able to protect themselves. You know, currently at the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office, I think we have around 58 to 62 school resource officers, which is great. We have them in those schools, but we're going to have to expand upon that. When the school resource officer program started back in around 1996, it was a luxury. It was not a necessity. Today, school resource officers have become a necessity, and we need to make sure that we are giving them all the proper training that they need, which they get a lot of training. Training at the Sheriff's Office does an outstanding job. During the summer, when those guys and those ladies are not in the schools, they are training with the training unit, prepared for those active shooter type situations. So we continue to improve that, and any opportunities we had to bring in outside training that they may benefit from would also be great. The second part are our churches, and now that's a big one. We're seeing that across the country right now. Many of our churches across the upstate of South Carolina have, and the Spartanburg County, have security teams that are already in place. But I think we need to come in as a sheriff's office and help train those security teams, ensure that they are prepared to respond, setting those churches up into quadrants so they understand if they deal with an active shooter, how are they going to deal with that threat, and make sure that they are prepared and have a response plan with them if they deal with that active shooter, so we will be able to respond and know what we're getting ourselves into.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. Mr. Clevenger, same question. How do you plan to increase safety in schools and churches?
Safety is going to happen when we can put more black and white deputies on the streets. Currently, as it's already been mentioned, we do have school resource officers in the majority, if not all, of our schools, and those need to be armed. We need to make sure that that deputy can take care of, or police officer, or wherever the jurisdiction may be, can take care of the children and the teachers within the schools. There is training currently going on at least once a year in collaboration with law enforcement, the school resource officers, EMS, and the fire service. And that concentrated effort is there to make sure that everything is dealt extremely quickly and to knock down the threat as far as our schools and our children. Repatriation with the parents is also extremely important. Those steps are always taken in consideration, and the planning does happen before we have something like that happen. But the increase in patrol, when a deputy can respond to help a school resource officer, is going to be extremely important in those situations. Our churches, already have plans in place. My brother was actually a training sergeant at the sheriff's office years ago and was one of the first ones that started a training program for the churches. So we need to augment that a little bit more, step it up, and make sure that everything is current within that training program, and making sure that the churches and their security teams are well informed and make sure they know their rights and how they would deal with specific situations.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Sticking with a topic that you have both brought up throughout the evening, community policing, talking about visibility in the neighborhoods. Community policing is a trend that many law enforcement leaders believe is one of the best ways to prevent crime. The Department of Justice reports that effective community policing depends on optimizing positive contact between patrol officers and community members. So how do you define community policing, and how important will that be in your role as sheriff? So Mr. Clevenger, you have 90 seconds.
A community police officer should be a problem solver just as much as they would a law enforcement officer. And when I say that, they ought to be keenly aware about what's going on in their communities. They should go out and try and identify maybe the underprivileged or underserved. And those relations they have with the other residents and the other businesses, they can reach out a helping hand and help those folks. That's the way you foster the trust with every aspect or every tier of the people within our community, from the richest of the rich to the poorest to the poor. We all need to, stick out a helping hand from time to time, and that community police officer can be the catalyst there that brings all these forces together to make our communities better. Not only, we've already mentioned that a community police officer helped me solve a murder, they're keenly aware of maybe problems that are going on with different families or different businesses within their jurisdiction or their chosen area, wherever they're stationed. That's unbelievably important for the sheriff's office to know. When something bad happens, we can call them to the area, we can glean that information from them, and hopefully when we talk about solving crimes quicker, we can definitely get to that, and our solvability rate on crimes and the speed at which we do that is highly increased when we do that.
Mr. Ryan, same question for you. How do you define community policing, and how important will that be in your role as sheriff?
I define community policing as my entire career. 23 of 29 years I've worked in community policing. When I retired from the Highway Patrol, I was executive commander that ran all community outreach and community policing for the entire state of South Carolina. When I started at the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office in 1996, I was on the very first community policing grant. It was a community policing grant. I was a resident deputy in Arcadia, Fair Forest. I saw instantaneously how those relationships that you make with those young people in the schools, the people in the communities, how they begin trusting you, how they begin talking to you, how they come to you because you become that Andy Griffith style of law enforcement officer, because they realize that you're there to solve their problems. Once you get in those relationships and you begin to make them have pride back in their communities, they begin policing themselves. And instead of having law enforcement policing them, what they do, they have law enforcement come along beside them. I have a plan in place. Now, we will have to get manpower up on uniform patrol because it's very, very important. But I have a plan in place to reestablish a community-oriented policing unit that's going to run in conjunction with the school districts across the Spartanburg County area. This is going to be utilized in many ways to work with the National Nights Out, to be in those underserved communities, working with those that have food insecurities and other obstacles that they may be dealing with. The other thing they're going to be doing, they're going to be getting into the schools, teaching these young people. School resource officers are there to protect the school, but getting in there, teaching these young people, making them change their behaviors on the front side so they're more successful on the back side as they become adults. And we will make this happen without question. I have a plan for doing so.
Mr. Ryan, thank you. You mentioned it. You will be first to answer this question, yes. But staying on the topic of uniform patrol.
Yes.
It's a key piece of law enforcement, often the first point of contact with the public. So what are your priorities when it comes to uniform patrol, and how much of a factor will that be if elected sheriff?
Uniform patrol is day one. That is going to be my very first priority going in there, outside of a couple other things with accountability. But uniform patrol has got to be taken care of. Uniform patrol is the tip of the spear. That entire office revolves around uniform patrol. Nothing in that agency works without uniform patrol, but uniform patrol can work without anything else in that agency. We have got to get our numbers up, and we have to be smarter about how we're doing business. We have colleges. We have 3 colleges in Spartanburg County. You've got Spartanburg Community College, you got SMC, you got USE Upstate. All of those colleges have unbelievable criminal justice programs. We need to be tapping into that and incentivizing them to come. 2.95% growth in Spartanburg County. People are moving here from across the world. They're making Spartanburg County a destination. Why is the Spartanburg County Sheriff's Office not a destination? There's avenues that we can use to attract these people, such as One Spartanburg. I found out One Spartanburg had offered internships, and for some reason they were turned down, up to 15 per year. We need to be tapping into those internships. Why are we not grabbing that and utilizing that and inspiring these young people to become the next deputies with our Sheriff's Office? The sheriff needs to be at those schools when we're recruiting, making them understand, I want you to come work with me. I want to be your sheriff. I want to groom you. I want to prepare you for that next step. I want you to be successful. I want you to be the next leaders in Spartanburg County. That's what it's going to take to rebuild Uniform Patrol.
All right, Mr. Clevenger, staying on the topic of uniform patrol, what are your priorities when it comes to uniform patrol, and how much of a factor will that be if elected sheriff?
I as well think that we need to be aggressively attracting and recruiting young deputies to come into the sheriff's office. But I believe our problem is more with the retention than it is recruitment. And to do that, we've got, as I've already stated, we've got to make sure everyone's being treated the same. We've got to look at the salary ranges. Currently, there are 3 steps within what used to be a salary range that were deleted for whatever reason. And these deputies have voiced a displeasure because they don't know what they're working for. They don't get the raises they deserve. Basically, the only raise they get is when a cost of living is given. We need to give incentives to these deputies to make sure that if they're have certain qualifications or they have a certain length of time in service to Spartanburg County, that they are rewarded for that. And cutting those pay line items out was a disservice to uniformed deputies, so we've got to do that. We've also got to look at master deputy and senior investigator positions, which we currently have a line of people qualified to be paid as one or both of those positions, but because the money has not been appropriated, then they're waiting in line until someone else leaves before they can actually get paid that salary. That's disingenuous to our deputies, and we need to make sure we correct it and make sure we can retain these good deputies.
Gentlemen, thank you. Moving now to a crucial part of the sheriff's office, that's the county jail. There was a stretch in recent years where 7 inmates died within 8 months at the county detention center. The former sheriff often blamed those deaths on factors outside the jail and out of the control of deputies. So, Mr. Clevenger, you first. As sheriff, what more do you believe can be done to prevent any deaths from happening inside the county detention center?
We're going to have to take a long, hard look at how these individuals are treated. Day in and day out, I deal with deaths outside that jail, and we as humans take for granted every day we get up, we think our health is going to be maintained. But to be incarcerated, sometimes people come into jail with comorbidities or other things that aren't recognized right off, or it's being ignored whenever they talk about the needs, the medical needs there. We're going to have to take a long, hard look at that. We're going to have to evaluate whether or not we want to keep the medical services inside the jail, or if we want to hire a private organization to come in and take care of that. We've also got to make sure we're monitoring these inmates that come in and make sure that if they have any level of danger, whether it be mentally, physically, or other stuff, we need to make sure they're put in an area where they can be watched on a regular basis, and a log be kept of that, because accountability, as we've been talking about already, is going to be paramount when it comes to these type situations.
Mr. Clevenger, thank you. Mr. Ryan, same thing. Again, 7 inmates died within 8 months at the county detention center. So as sheriff, what more do you believe can be done to prevent any deaths from happening inside the jail?
Well, I have to just admit, most of what Mr. Clevenger said, he's exactly right. That is what we have to do. There's so many of the things that he was talking about, but as he said, many of the people that come in, they end up coming in and they have some kind of a drug in their system or something like that. And as he said, we're going to have to look at the medical side of it, make a determination on how we're going to monitor that. You do have to monitor them and make sure that we are ensuring that they are getting all that they need when it comes right down to it. But unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are out of control of the deputies, because the deputies that are there at the jail, I can assure you, are doing the best they can to protect those that are coming in there. They do have to make sure that they are taking care of those people while they are in the detention center, but we also need to look outside of the sheriff's office. We need to look at other jails across the nation that may have experienced the same type of issues, may have experienced the same type of problems that have taken place within the jail, and we need to look at what they did to correct that and maybe change our policies to match their policies and see where their successes were and see if we can attain the same successes.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Moving on to a topic that has caught a lot of attention since the former sheriff resigned. That's Rolling Thunder.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Ryan, you first. Rolling Thunder was a staple of the previous administration. Is a multi-agency operation focused on interstate enforcement. Interim Sheriff Jeff Stevens has ended the program and called it an easy decision to do so. So our question to you is, if elected sheriff, will you bring back Rolling Thunder? Why or why not?
Thank you very much. It's a great question. No, if I'm elected sheriff, I will not bring back Rolling Thunder. We have better money or better things to do with our assets than have Rolling Thunder. In its infancy, when it first started, Rolling Thunder was an outstanding program. It was being controlled and it was being run different. Over time, Rolling Thunder's turned into something completely different. The informational network that people have who are traveling through our state and traveling through Spartanburg County specifically, as soon as that Rolling Thunder started after that first year, they knew it was going on. They had alternative routes to get around, so it was not as effective, and as the years went on, it continued to go down. There are a lot of civil issues that go along with that, and in no way, shape, or form do I agree with civil asset forfeiture without a charge being taken place at that point in time. If you have not charged them, we should not be taking any of their money or taking anything else. The other issue that you have is when you have agencies coming in from across the state who may not match your policies and your procedures within your agency, and then they go out there and they start enforcing things, it opens the county up to lawsuits. And those are things that we do not need to have happen. We have to be fiscally responsible even when it comes to those type of lawsuits to protect the taxpayers' money. What we need to do is ensure that we have an interdiction team that is working out there 365 days a year. 85 and 26 are commonly referred to as the corridor of the South, and we have to ensure that we're out there getting those drugs off of those interstates.
Mr. Clevenger, same question. If elected sheriff, will you bring Rolling Thunder back? Why or why not?
At the beginning of my campaign, I stated that I was on the fence about Rolling Thunder. I wanted to evaluate the practice, but since I've had more time to review and look at it, no, I would not bring Rolling Thunder back. And the reason, as Mr. Ryan's already stated, a lot of the reasons are the same. I always had an argument about asset forfeiture being taken and monies just being signed over without an arbiter or a judge to look at the legalities of how that was done, making sure their Fourth Amendment rights were being held to. There's a slippery slope there, an extreme problem with just taking money from someone that travels up and down the road. There are businessmen that deal in cash a lot more than they deal in checks. And so if you got a businessman rolling down the road and he's got a large amount of cash but has no drugs, or something else, stolen property that could be attributed to the money, you need to take a long, hard look at that and think about whether or not that money needs to be taken. So based on that decision, again, the premise behind Rolling Thunder was a great idea. That was removing illegal traffic going up and down our highways, and it was amazing just in a 3 or 4 day time about how much we could show the public was being taken, confiscated. But the asset forfeiture part of that, extremely problematic, and that's why I would not bring it back.
All right, gentlemen, moving on now. You have both mentioned you don't want to give too many details about the command staff you plan to have in place if elected sheriff, something we've discussed here on Fox Carolina News extensively. But it is a major question for a lot of voters. So, Mr. Clevenger, you first. If elected sheriff, do you plan to bring in people from outside the sheriff's office to help you lead, or do you plan to promote from within? You have 90 seconds.
It will be a mixed bag. There are those that I've considered for positions that would be outside the sheriff's office, and there are a few inside the sheriff's office that I would consider in command staff. Having the investigative time that I have with members of the sheriff's office, I've been able to identify true leaders within that department, but what they need is direction, and that's what the sheriff's going to have to bring to that agency. And then there's going to have to be some fresh blood, just like the public has been demanding in other key positions within the command staff, to make sure that the public is ensured that there's none of the past administration that may have been problematic is still remaining. The public has been very clear about who and why there was a problem within the sheriff's office, and if elected sheriff, I would make sure that we got their public trust back and bring trustworthy people in to do the jobs that are needed.
Mr. Clevenger, thank you. Mr. Ryan, same question. If elected sheriff, do you plan to bring in people from outside the sheriff's office to help you lead, or do you plan to promote from within?
Yes, as Mr. Clevenger said, I have to agree with his statement. I've vetted a lot of people at this point in time. I've not made any final decisions, but it will come from both the outside and it will come from the inside. It's important when you come in as a new sheriff that you have people around you that you know are going to be loyal to you, that are going to have your back when you're making decisions, because when we come into that situation, a lot of times you could have leftover from the previous administration, and one of the issues that you have is if you have that, you don't know whether they're actually with you and making the same decisions that you're trying to make, or if they're going against you because they don't like the fact that you may be the new sheriff. This is something that's common that we see, but it's very, very important that when we select that command staff, that we match that command staff. You want to go after people who say uniform patrol. You need to find that best person for uniform patrol that is going to match those men and women that are on uniform patrol, that's going to inspire them, going to make them want to work, going to make them want to aspire to be like them. The same with investigations, the same with administrative. You have to make sure that people understand, though, don't be as focused, because that's one of the greatest fears that I have seen through this process and talking with many deputies. Over the past, it's more the command staff they feel like that has run things. That's not how it will work under my administration. You're going to see collective leadership. You're going to have a sheriff and a command staff that come together as one, and we're going to lead that agency through collective leadership to ensure that we're providing them and we're actually leading from the rear, because leading from the front, I'm sorry, great leaders always eat last, and we want to make sure that we are providing them everything that they need.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. We are running tight on time, so you have 30 seconds for this response. Our final question here for this discussion portion of tonight's debate. In response to allegations against the former sheriff, many have expressed a desire for term limits for sheriff. So if elected sheriff, are you willing to commit to term limits? Why or why not? Mr. Ryan, you have 30 seconds.
Well, I'm personally willing to commit to term limits, obviously, because I'm 50 years old now. We all have a shelf life. I think that's why it's important that you not get into this position to start running until later, because if you run earlier, what you have is you have those career sheriffs. And those career sheriffs, the things that happen are what we've just seen. Absolute power corrupts absolute. So yes, I do believe in term limits. I would keep myself to no more than finishing out this 3 years and 2 more terms. 11 years would be the max that I would do.
All right, Mr. Clevenger, same question. If elected sheriff, are you willing to commit to term limits? Why or why not?
I am, and at the beginning of my campaign, I made it very clear that what I wanted to do is come in and bring the sheriff's office up to its present glory, and then to lift leaders within the sheriff's office. I personally committed to, if elected, working out these last 3 years in this term and 1 more term for a grand total of 7 years. And I think that's enough to clean up what we need to clean up and raise leaders within the sheriff's office.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. That does it for our discussion portion of tonight's debate. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll have your closing statements for voters at home. Thank you.